fantastic to have you here with us at Future Human. These days, you're a CEO of Verizon Consumer based in New Jersey, I do believe. Could you just give us a little whistle-stop tour of your own career and how you got to where you are today and your current role, please?
Sure, and firstly, thank you for the invitation. Hugely excited to join. So the background is I'm an accountant by profession, trained in Dublin, worked for 8 years in banking in London, then moved into the telecom space where laterally I was the CEO of O2 in the UK. And about 4 years ago, Telefonica put O2 up for sale. And at that time, although the deal ultimately didn't go through, as it was known that I was going to be leaving, I got the opportunity to come out here to New Jersey to run then Verizon Wireless, and we've since then reorganized, so we now have a consumer business and a B2B business. So I run both fixed and mobile for Verizon, a pure US business, but to give you a sense, 100 million customers and about a $95 billion turnover. So I'm overall 4 years in the US and in this new construct about 18 months or so. And truth is, it's no different. The extra notes on the end about everything in America are just for show.
I love it. And there's been so many announcements sort of in the last couple of weeks during October. One of the things I absolutely want to talk to you about is 5G, hugely relevant to you guys in Verizon. Start by telling me a little bit about recent announcements with Apple and the likes of that, please.
Sure. So we've been working for a couple of years on a strategy that was particularly focused around the very high bands of spectrum, millimeter wave, to really allow a differentiated experience on 5G. And then we've spent a few years talking to chip manufacturers, device manufacturers, and ultimately network equipment vendors, really to persuade them that that was the way to go. And so over the last 18 months, we've been building out this new 5G network. And to give you a sense, it runs at 4 to 5 gig download speeds on a wireless connection, not 4 to 5 megs, 4 to 5 gigs on a download connection, and also brings you things like really low latency. So getting the ecosystem to work, making sure that Samsung, Apple, Qualcomm, most recently we've announced partnerships with Amazon and Microsoft, all bought into what I would call the double chocolate chip version of 5G was really important. And we've been announcing quite a few initiatives around that, including my chairman taking part in the keynote out in Cupertino last week.
Very good. And I mean, 5G, the opportunities are phenomenal. And, during this event, we'll be talking to various people around future of health, telemedicine. We've got Felix Lejeunesse later talking about augmented reality. I mean, 5G is crucial to those areas, isn't it?
Well, I think if I may, I'd start by just confirming that for so many people, the reality of the last 7 or 8 months has just copper fastened the need for connectivity to be both widespread and inclusive. And that's both socioeconomically inclusive and also geographically inclusive. And so, our base case is build brilliant 4G, get as many people on board as possible, and then augment that with an even faster, better, more capable 5G network. And as you describe, I think some of the things that we're particularly excited about is that more of the, not just products, but the services that people rely on, community-based services, societal services, whether that's access to finance, to telehealth, telemedicine, to long-term care, to education. We now have the sort of capabilities in our wireless and our mobile networks to support the quality of experience that as a citizen, you reasonably expect nowadays. So that for me is the exciting thing. And yes, it translates into AR, VR, it translates into global gaming online that's faster than what you can do on a fiber connection. But it starts with making sure that more people get more of the things that are fundamental to their rights within community and society these days to be a fully fledged and fully active citizen.
And do you see, this pandemic that we're in the middle of? Do you see the major acceleration that's going on that way, and do you think it will sort of push whether it be governments or organizations to move even faster?
Well, the first thing to say is I think broadly around the world, uh, people have been pleasantly surprised at the fact that the networks have stood up to the test because the traffic moved, from being in downtown New York to suburban New Jersey overnight. 60-70% of the volume of traffic shifted location. And that's a challenge for networks. So I think at a base level, the good news is it does what it says on the tin, and so what we've built so far is scalable and capable of the demands of the new reality. I think what we have to try and do now is understand particularly public-private partnership, whether that be rural fibre in Ireland, whether it be rural broadband here in the US. How do we make sure that where normal economics stop, well then public policy meets to make sure that it is genuinely inclusive. And so in the US at the moment, there is going to be an auction of funds available from central government for rural development that are specifically intended to broaden out the coverage and as much as possible bring 5G to rural areas that wouldn't otherwise receive it. But the reality still in the US is that if you're in a deprived neighborhood in New York or in a rural part of the United States, there's a very good chance you don't have good connectivity yet. So the US, like most Western countries, has a lot more to do just on basic inclusion.
Yeah, and you're talking about inclusion there, and those who are disadvantaged socioeconomically. I know corporate citizenship is something that is dear to your heart from our previous conversations. Am I right?
Absolutely. And I think, we've done a couple of things and there's always a lot more to do, but affordability. So right across the industry in the US, we all joined a thing called Keep Americans Connected pledge and actually committed that even if you couldn't pay your bill because you'd been furloughed, to use the new word, or laid off, that nobody would lose their connectivity, recognizing how important it was for people. But also, we have programs, particularly in the area of education, where we're investing hundreds of millions of dollars to try to improve access to good quality education, but also the quality of education itself, giving more digital tools to teachers to help them learn. But the reality also of making sure that then the school kids have connectivity when they go home, whether that be the tablet they need or, as has been highlighted on a number of occasions recently, the fact that you see people clustering in shopping malls, around outside diners and restaurants. Why? Because there's Wi-Fi there and those people don't have connections at home. So we're trying to make sure that we're addressing all of those elements, affordability and accessibility.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I want to move on to something that you and I have discussed in the past as well, and that is, I suppose, that whole change and the kind of the reset that we could see coming out of this pandemic. Like, we know people have had a dreadfully tough time, but it would be nice to look beyond that and look at maybe the positives that come out of this. And I know there's an expression you use, which I think is positive discontinuity, I think was
Exactly.
the word. Can you tell us a bit more about that? And I'd love to know your own thoughts about like what positive could come out of this and this great reset that we might see.
Well, I think, as you rightly said, we have to recognize that for a lot of people, the disruption, displacement, and the pain and suffering has been huge. And while we still have more to do to address that today reality, I think the ambition that we don't get back to business as usual, but we get back to better, I think is one that we can all aspire to. And so this idea of moving from survive to thrive and actually trying to use this reset, this circuit break as a positive discontinuity to say, when we come back, can we do it better, faster, more inclusive, more capable? And I think that's a reasonable ambition. And just to give you a sense of what my idea of the change that we've seen over the last 6-9 months is, I think people's attitude to change, the window of opportunity that we always describe, I honestly believe that window is wider open today than it's ever been. People's willingness to consider more dramatic change. And if I can use one practical example from my own business, I have about 17,000 people who answer the phone every day to customers here in the US. And over 2.5 years, I had moved 2,500 of those employees to working from home to give them more flexibility. In 17 days, we moved the remaining 17,000 people home. So 2.5 years for 2,500, 17 days for 17,000. If we can do that, then I think it's quite right that we should at least consider scaling our ambition for what the new normal looks like post this positive discontinuity.
I mean, how challenging has that been? I mean, that's a massive move for that many people. I mean, tell me a little bit about the challenge and the good and the bad.
Well, one of the things that it highlighted was not everybody had great connectivity at home. So exactly what we discussed before. And for those colleagues, we were able to find alternatives and redeployment opportunities, because we also have about 15,000 people in retail stores every day. But what we recognized was that one of the commitments we've made is to be an employer of choice, not just in the category, but in the US. And that means not paying a minimum wage, but paying living wage. And we recognize that by being able to separate the physical location of our call centers and the job opportunities, that we could bring work to people rather than people have to move to come to work. Whether that be supporting people, we have a strong relationship with veterans here in the US, supporting people, spouses on military bases to give them work to do, whether it be going into areas of higher pockets of unemployment. So what we tried to do was not solve what was just an operational issue, but was to reimagine what we could do with the employment opportunities that we had. Created a new type of work pattern where we give people the flexibility of split shifts, for example, which says I have kids that I need to bring to school and bring home from school. So if I can at all, please don't have me scheduled between 8 and 10 and 3 and 5. Well, we can do that because that works. We also have time zones across the US. So the key thing there is, to my point of positive discontinuity, it wasn't how do you move 17,000 people to do what they used to do, but how do you imagine the nature of how work gets done to actually make it a better opportunity than just simply a physical migration. And that's been great. We've also created hybrid roles where people want to be, for example, in the front line. So some of them have gone to retail, but they're retail during the busy periods, and then they're taking calls from customers during quieter periods, because the patterns of when people call a call center and when people go into a retail store are actually lowly correlated. So that's the idea of just thinking about things differently rather than just simply trudging to try and replicate what we always did. And our employees love it.
And I mean, just continuing that area of positive discontinuity, I mean, do you have sort of thoughts on the future of business and, how, other than we're kind of talking very much there about talent, but what about the way we do business and the business models?
So I think that's going to be hugely important. And just before the pandemic, we actually made an acquisition of a platform called Blue Jeans, which is similar to a Zoom or Microsoft Meet or other such platforms. And it's a collaboration platform. And so we've been thinking a lot about how the smart deployment of technology, and I'm guilty of having spent the last 18 years in this industry. I don't actually believe that people buy technology. I believe that people buy the experiences that technology enables, or in the business case, solutions that technology enables. So we've been trying to reorient this idea of not be slaves to the tech, but make the tech slaves to what we want to do, and therefore try to make it more solution-oriented, solution-based for both consumers and business. And in that mind, we were thinking about the nature of work anyway. We were thinking about more distributed. We were thinking about the idea that, one of the capabilities that 5G allows is ultra-low latency. Well, and people talk about it and they say, oh, well, gaming, there's an example. But imagine the creative industries. Imagine the fact that we're making music together, making movies together. We can be in different locations, and because of the ultra low latency, we can sing in harmony, we can duet, we can, whatever the example might be. Now, I can't sing, but I bet you can. But it really allows you to redefine what the opportunity is. And I think that for me is this idea with the fourth industrial revolution bringing 5G and real, data analytics at scale. We can afford to use our imaginations and say, actually, these things can be done differently. And, the previous industrial revolution was the one that created the concept of work-life balance, clocking on, clocking off, the urbanization as everybody got sent to the towns because that was where the work was. I think we can create a lot more choice by using technology smartly to serve our needs rather than simply be slaves to the tech itself.
Listen, Ronan, that was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. It's fantastic to be talking to you there in New Jersey. And thanks so much for being part of Future Human. Yes, thanks a million.
Well, thank you so much for the invite and the best of luck for the whole of the event. I will be watching with interest.